And welcome everybody to another Tuesday afternoon with KIS Organics. Thank you guys for watching on the KIS Organics YouTube channel every week and over here on the Chad Westport YouTube channel, second Tuesday of every month. But we're here to answer your questions about organic gardening. And I'm just going to comment, I watch in the off weeks, and I think you guys give Brandon and Tad more questions than you give Tad and myself. So let's get some questions going today.
We had a ton of questions last week, by far the most ever. I couldn't even get through them all. It was almost like we needed a moderator because I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It's good to have, it's good. Again, we're coming up on the time of year when people are going to be thinking about planting outside or, at least maybe getting some of their starts going, whether it's, cannabis or not. But do you have any tips for maybe people that would start something inside and then move them outdoors in a month or so?
Yeah, well, you definitely need to harden off your plants. Anyone can look that up. But also, like today it's unseasonably warm right now here in the Northwest. I know some parts of the country are dealing with really cold weather. We've had very warm weather. And so I was out there today pruning and cleaning up. There's various weeds, like shotweed's one of the more popular weeds that you see pop up around here, and it's already flowering. So I want to get to it now before it produces seeds. So you really have to know what's in your yard or in your area to stay ahead on some of that stuff, because it'll just make life so much easier down the road. But what I would say in terms of starting seeds and plants, if you're going to be going outdoors with them, starting them early is not always the best. You really need soil temps to warm up before you go plant outside, or you're going to stress and stunt your plants. And you'd be better off starting them later and planting them in warmer conditions. And I do that every year. You see it with tomatoes at Home Depot. People buy the first round, they all die or they look like crap. And then they come back and buy more, a month later when it's actually a good time to plant, which is like traditionally around Mother's Day here in Washington, just as a general rule. So for tomatoes, at least. So I think that's probably the 2-minute version. Yeah. How about you?
That works. I'm glad you mentioned soil temp, because again, being someone in the Pacific Northwest, we get 3 days of like 60-degree weather. We're in our t-shirts. We're like already making beach plans, and that soil temp is still where it was the week before. So getting over anxious. And that's kind of maybe where my tip ties in is, again, check the lighting schedules, because it's every year I get questions from people. It's like, I put plants out and then it started flowering, but then it went back into the veg phase. People just put their plants outside to harden them off in a period where the light hours are still more, traditional flowering time, and they get a little bit of a re-veg going. So check your lighting schedule, see when the right time to put it out is, or just expect, a little few re-veg and the 3 leaves coming out. That's always, people send me pictures of like, dude, my plant has 3 leaves and it's kind of doing this weird stretch thing. It's like, yeah, you put it out probably about a month too early.
Yeah. That's good advice.
Yeah. We do have a question coming in here from I Get Woes. Thank you for the question. How to revive soil that has dried out and sat for long periods?
Yeah. So if the soil, well, depends. So like in my indoor grow, I let my soil before this last run that I completed, I let it sit for 6 months, just completely dried out indoors. And so I knew that I hadn't leached fertility. If that same soil had been sitting outside, like in a raised bed, I can confidently assume there's not a lot of nutrients left in there by the time I go to plant because of all the rains. Indoors, though, it's really just about getting it wet again. So that's where you can use a surfactant or something like Thermex or Yucca, aloe, even a couple drops of dish soap. It just makes the water stickier, makes it wetter. That being said, all I did for my beds was just got in there a couple of weeks before I knew I was going to be planting into them and started adding water a little bit at a time. And then eventually that peat moss became less hydrophobic and the beds got re-wetted. I added my nutrients back in, got the microbes active again, and then was off and running. So you don't really have to do a lot.
Nice. And I've been using like a 20-gallon trash bin. Once I'm done with, my runs for the Westport Blend, I put it into there. And, a lot of times the soil was sitting there kind of dry beforehand. So I get it in there. And I always wear my mask, guys, because it gets dusty. Preferably do it outside. But a lot of times what I've done is, when I'm ready to reuse it, I've amended it, just add a little bit of water. Well, not a little bit, but I add a decent amount of water to the top, kind of stir that up. And eventually, if I do that enough times, then it becomes that regular kind of consistent moisture level throughout my soil. And then I'm able to, scoop and fill large enough pots to where I'm confident that, it's not going to be like the dry clumps over here and the wetter clumps over here to start with. So that is just kind of one thing I do. And I always love, shout out to Mr. Toad, but he says spray with saponins. I love saying, what's saponins? But it's kind of like a surfactant that, again, makes the water wetter or bind to the soil better.
Yeah, if you are going into a trash can, ideally I'd have some drain holes on the bottom of it in case you put too much water in, so the bottom part's not waterlogged. And then additionally, if you do that, leave the lid off the trash can, because the thing you want to keep in mind all the time is that your microbes are alive. And so if we add water, seal that thing up, you're going to get anaerobic conditions, and it's just not as healthy for the soil.
And you'll know that you've hit those anaerobic conditions because it's going to smell off. It's going to smell a little rotten, a little putrid. And yeah, I've learned, drill holes in the bottom because I've done that. I've got to the bottom of a can once and it's just kind of like slop. You're like, okay. So lesson learned there.
While you're looking for another question, I was going to share an interesting consulting call I had last week where the grower said that he had amended his soil in his grow room. It's a commercial facility, and they were getting a lot of ammonia smells, that off odor. So it was like super stinky in there, and he wasn't confident to plant into it. And what we said, this is one of the few times where I could be very confident about my answer. I was like, well, what were your temperatures in the room? And he had turned off all the heat into that room. And nitrogen specifically cycles primarily by temperature. So if your soil temperature is really cold, that nitrogen's not going to cycle. That's why we don't put out nitrogen, this time of year. Beyond it, not just the fact it's going to leach, it's not going to be really available. So by him heating the room back up, and then because the water, his soil was also waterlogged too. He said it just wasn't, the water was not leaving the beds and it had gotten too wet. And so it was a combination of two issues there. But by heating up the room, raising that soil temperature, and then also drying it out a little bit, that nitrogen should cycle. He probably lost some of it, but that was just an odd issue where if you have soil sitting in a very, very cold space, you can't expect the microbes to be as active and the nutrients to cycle rapidly.
That's interesting. I've never honestly really thought about the nutrient cycling effect in temperature. I've considered microbes and like the kind of the life action, but that's freaking interesting. And when you say cold, does it have to be close to 32 degrees freezing, or is this sitting outside in my like 50-degree shed?
Yeah, 40s or 50s is still pretty cold. Not to be crude, but do you want to have sex when it's 70 degrees or when it's 35 degrees? Like microbes are kind of the same way for the most part. Like they're not reproducing and eating a ton when it's super cold.
That's why my stage name is Microbe. Yes. No. Just joking, kids. Just joking. Okay, we do have more.
You have all the dad jokes for not being a dad. It's great. I love it.
I love it. I got to do my best, man. It's because all my friends have kids. I was saying the other day, it's like all my mixtapes now are the clean versions of the music, and all my jokes are just dad jokes, so I can still hang out and share with my friends.
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, let's see here. Puff the Magic Grandpa, shout out. Thank you for the question. It says, question, in an Earthbox using KIS nutrient pack from the start of the cycle, would you apply KIS flower boost once or every 2 weeks? Once every 2 or 3 weeks. Earthbox is less than 15 gallons, but seems different. I'll let you take this because you're the professional.
Well, I was going to say, why don't
But
you
I
field
also
this
I'll
one?
tell them what I
You have
do.
more. You actually have more experience growing in this size container with our soil than I do. So
True, actually. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I go about every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It depends if it's a heavier feeder. I'm also in the 7-gallon. So, if you're in the 15-gallon, 3 weeks would probably be good. I go, again, the Westport Blend soil gets you going pretty well. I really only amended once off of that original run, but since I reused it and I just keep amending it, yeah, I typically amend my soil. I'll let it go for probably about 2 weeks, 3 weeks as a proper vegging plant. And then that's when I get on my 2 or 3 week cycle of nutrient pack and then the bloom booster. So that's kind of what I do. Watch your plants. Again, always going to be strain dependent, but yeah, every 2 or 3 weeks. I kind of erred on the side of 2 weeks just because I know we're not going to damage the plant by giving it maybe a little bit extra. If anything, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tab, but maybe the next run, there will still be more nutrients left over in that soil to kind of get the next clone or seed going.
yeah, you can. One way, if you're not doing a soil test, you could check your EC or ppms to see sort of what level of fertility you have approximately. But I think that was good. I think that's good advice, what you said.
Okay. And when you say check the EC and the ppm, are you talking about doing runoff? And then in soil, is it something where we'd have to do like a slurry test, and maybe you can explain slurry tests? Or is it something like Coco where we can just, straight in, straight out, that's the accurate reading?
I think it depends on your meter. We typically recommend like runoff tests, but if you're in beds, that's not always practical, in which case you may have to do a slurry test. I have a Blue Lab probe that will allow me to just go around and take EC readings. But if you know at a certain moisture level what your EC is and you see it dropping, then you could say, okay, maybe I need to add some more nutrients at that point. But there's not a lot of good ways to know other than how your plant is responding. And that's why it's a little bit tricky with organics, because you're always playing the game of what's my plant going to look like in 10 to 14 days. And if you think it's going to be low on nutrients, whatever nutrient that is, then you want to apply it now. And so it's a little bit harder. And if you don't get it in time, I like to have something like a fish hydrolysate, like the CFOS is a good product, because it's kind of like a natural bloom booster that's just a little more available if you do need a fertility boost mid-cycle in a small container.
Faster boost. Okay, cool. We got some great questions coming in.
Yeah, I can see that.
Starring them all here. All right. The next question is going water only this next run. If I'm trying to get a baseline, should I still use things like microbes, full power, and Exil 16?
Yes, I love that question. So a lot of times I try to get growers to just run the soil with nothing but water for the entire cycle. Now, that's assuming a bed or a larger pot or container. If you're in a 7 or maybe even a 15, yeah, I could see supplementing just to make sure you make it through the whole cycle, because it's a smaller container for organics. But I do think getting a baseline is a great idea. I just did a run in the bed with the under canopy lighting. I put the video up on YouTube. You guys can check out the video and the photos. I literally did nothing but water. I didn't do microbes. I didn't do full power. I didn't do egg cell. I didn't do compost tea. It was literally just water. I did sprinkle a little mycorrhizal fungus in the holes when I transplanted the plants, but that was it. So yeah, you absolutely can do just water if your fertility is already in the soil. So let me preface this. I added our nutrient pack at 8 cups per 4x4 bed prior to planting. So there was fertility in there. It's not like it's just water. But from then on out, I didn't add any other fertility. And I got over 3 pounds out of the side with the under canopy light. And a little over 500 grams on the side with just top lighting.
Nice. Mantis is
Yeah.
doing a second water only soil. Congratulations, man. Keep that
Yeah.
going. And you mentioned
Can I add to that last thing though? I will say
yeah.
the things that you listed, microbes, full power, and egg seal, I think those all are potentially good additives. My first thing that I'm going to add, if I'm going to add one thing, it's going to be egg seal 16H, which is silica. In fact, I just re-released a foundation series of my podcast with Dr. Wendy Zellner. If you haven't listened to it, you absolutely should. Silica is amazing. After that, I think adding microbes, and specifically the products I really like are microbial mass or mammoth P, those P solubilizing microbes that are the consortia. I've seen really good results with those. And we actually have data from a commercial facility showing a statistically significant bump in yield. So I would start with those two. Nothing wrong with full power. If I was going to rank things that I could add that I know is going to have a plant benefit without like messing up my fertility, those two are really easy wins, and they're very affordable too relative to some of the stuff you could add.
Mammoth P is expensive. I will say that. The silica though, or the Agsil 16, because I'm assuming the soil blends do kind of already have a certain amount of silica worked into it. If we are also supplementing that at what, the recommended rate on the back of their packaging, do we run a risk of throwing off that balance quickly and antagonizing some other nutrients that the plant is going to need? Or are we fairly safe if we stay within the guardrails?
It's hard to get too much silica into there.
Okay.
It's a pretty safe amendment. It's kind of like some people use gypsum. Like it's really hard to overdo it. That's not to say there aren't instances where you could, but if you're following the label rates with Agsil, or if you add something like wolastanite, which is calcium silicate, into your soil, or diatomaceous earth, or something that contains silica like that, you should see plant benefit, and there's not a lot of downsides to it.
Awesome. Okay, another question. You mentioned mycorrhizal fungi here a second ago. Fuzzy Bunny says, if I'm adding mycorrhizal fungi and irrigate with water that has been pH down with phosphoric acid, am I hindering inoculation? Basically reducing the mass, correct?
Yeah. So actually, the correct term, no offense, Fuzzy, I know you know your stuff, it would be infection. Because what happens is that mycorrhizal fungus, and in the case of cannabis, endomycorrhizal fungus, so it actually infects inside the root itself. It needs to form with the root, and it does that because the plant wants phosphorus and other nutrients. If it's getting sufficient available phosphate from phosphoric acid, it's not going to form that relationship based on what the research shows. So what I would do if I'm adding mycorrhizal fungus, I would wait probably 14 to 21 days before using anything with phosphoric acid in it, or any high P inputs like that. If I really want to use mycorrhizal fungus correctly, and get best chance for infection.
Okay, because that was kind of ties into the next question, and something I was going to bring up is this is a very common time to sprinkle it on your root system because it's out, it's exposed. But the question here from the closet grower was, I transplant into my 30-gallon bed for a short acclimation and flip to flower. Would using mycorrhizae be throwing money away if I amend towards higher P between cycles? And you had mentioned, again, that kind of infection period. Do we have enough time if we're going into a quick flip after we transplant for it to really infect and then have a plant benefit before we're almost ready to harvest, assuming 60-day flower?
Yeah. That's a great question. And you'll get different answers from different people. Some will say it's not worth it because it is such a short crop for the most part. Whereas I have talked to some mycorrhizal experts that say, yes, absolutely, you should still get benefit from it because it does other things besides just cycle phosphorus. That's what it's most famous for, but it also helps increase root surface area, drought resistance, other nutrient uptake. So it has a lot of other benefits. Now, If you are in a commercial facility, we want to think twice about it because it also increases the uptake of heavy metals, which can be a risk in certain regulated markets. For the general grower at home, it's probably just fine. But don't think of mycorrhiza as just being something that you can supplement away with phosphoric acid or high P. It does have other known plant benefits with cannabis and other plants too. So yeah, I would try to get it incorporated into your soil, into your soil when you first plant as a one-time application, and it's a relatively an inexpensive thing to do. So I would recommend it for the most part. You don't have to do it. A lot of people grow without it and get great results too, but it's very affordable if you're just putting a little bit in every hole.
And does it promote root growth? I'm always a fan of looking at my root ball after the fact. And if I have, two of the same, let's just say same strain, same clone, same size, and I grow those and I flip them both out afterwards, should I expect the one with the mycorrhiza to have a more robust root system? Or is it really those small hairs that are taking in the nutrients? So not necessarily observable difference.
Yeah, so there are a lot of photos from companies like Mycorrhizal Applications and other crops that show a better root structure overall. One thing that people mistake is that what they think they're seeing with what they're calling mycorrhiza, any visible fungus is not going to be endomycorrhizal. You can't see it; it's too small. You actually have to do root staining because it's inside the root tissue itself. So yes, you might get larger root structure. No, you can't visually see mycorrhizal fungus or know if a plant is infected with endomycorrhizal fungus unless you do specific microscope staining.
Okay, perfect. Because we've all seen the little fuzz, next to the roots and growing off of it. We're like, that's that's what it is. Close. But
those are your root hairs, and they're super important. And we can talk about those too, but it's not necessarily mycorrhizal. Yeah.
Well, kind of switching maybe from fungal to bacteria. Shout out to Mr. Organics.
Hey.
Cultivation Network. Big up, buddy. Actually, you were just on there the other day. I was watching you guys have a conversation.
Was it Wednesday? Just last week. Thursday? Yeah, that was fun. I had a great time.
That's awesome. And here he comes in with a great question. He should a compost tea in flower? So we're being specific about the cycle or the, state that our plant is in. But should a compost tea in flower be more fungal opposed to bacteria? What are the benefits of the two? And let's break that down. Is one swimming with creepy crawly little bacterias and the other's got like a skim layer of fungus on it? What are we talking here?
Yeah, so this was my background actually, because my dad started a compost tea company and was one of the very first soil food web advisors back in the day. So like compost tea was like all I did for a long time. And the idea was, a lot of this goes back to Jeff Lowenfels and Elaine Ingham when Jeff published the plant succession chart. And you can see, basically picture like starting with like lava rock in Hawaii. So like just essentially stone with barely any soil. And then you go over, you have, grasses starting to show up, and then you'll have shrubs, and then you have like forests, and then you have your full climax forest, which would be like your old growth forest on the other end. So you have the scale all the way across, starting from pretty much very little to no life to something with, extreme, like a very established ecosystem. And everyone says, well, cannabis falls in sort of this grasses area of, where it would grow. And if you take that chart and then you say, bare rock over here, complete old growth forest over here, it kind of goes bacterially dominated all the way to fungally dominant. So that old growth forest is going to be fungally dominant. That, newly formed soil is going to be bacterial dominant. And then everything else is sort of a ratio in between. So people thought, I need to apply the microbes based on where my plant falls on this chart. It's a very logical conclusion, but unfortunately, it's a little bit of a fallacy. So two thoughts. One, in terms of compost tea itself, compost tea is a shotgun approach. We're trying to get a balanced tea of bacteria, fungus, protozoa, all those different microorganisms, archaea, and we're just going to put it out there. And then the plant controls what survives in the rhizosphere, that area around the roots, based on the plant exudates it puts out and all of that. So we're not trying to necessarily create a bacterial tea or a fungal tea. We just want to make a tea that has as much diversity as possible, and then we're going to let nature sort it out. So that's the first part of that. The second part of it is that this idea of fungal to bacterial ratios that you hear people talk about, and I've heard soil food by people say, well, the reason your plant wasn't healthy was because you didn't have the right compost with the right fungal to bacteria ratio in your soil or something. That's all, for the most part, the vast majority of the scientific community, from the soil science perspective, would say that's kind of all bullshit. The fungal to bacteria ratios will change just with a rainfall outside. We'll have an explosion of bacteria. So these microbes, their life cycles and the scale that they're on is so different than ours. These things are always in flux. And at the end of the day, the plant really handles that for us too. So long story short, don't get caught up on worrying about bacteria and fungal stuff too much. It's probably all there in your soil if you're using healthy quality or inputs like good worm castings, good compost. If you're keeping your moisture levels good in your soil, and then just make a really high quality compost tea, and you should see good results.
So it's kind of, again, like the organic living soil, it's just balance. We kind of have what it needs in the soil, and that's a balance of kind of everything across the board. It's going to be in flux, and the plant will pull what it needs when it needs it. Our job is to just make sure everything is there. So I appreciate that. That was a deeper breakdown.
Actually, interestingly enough, agriculturally cultivated soils have higher microbial biomass and diversity than like plains or other, forest or something. Interesting enough, because we think soil disturbance and agriculture is all damaging. In a lot of ways, it can be very damaging to the environment. But there's actually some very healthy, fertile soils out there that are ones that we cultivate. So,
dude, can't wait to show you my soil here, man. It's sick. Kind of sticking on maybe the teas here question, and then I've got some cocoa questions coming up here too, because there were a couple. But this one is banana tea a viable solution for making a potassium-rich solution just by steeping banana peels in water with a bubbler for 24 hours? Because again, you get a muscle cramp, everybody's like, oh, you need potassium, eat a banana. So we toss the peel away. What are we doing? Does this work?
Great question. Maybe. How much potassium is seeping out in 24 hours? I don't know. How much potassium is in peels? I don't know. Is the banana industry completely a corporate
conspiracy
mess? Absolutely. I guess if you lived in Hawaii and you had access to a banana tree, it's something to consider. Otherwise, I would just use something like potassium sulfate. It's 50% potassium. It's available. We know exactly how much is in it, soluble in water, and we can put very dosed, concentrated amounts of potassium out for our plants. Yes, if it's all you have, you probably could experiment with it, but I'd have no idea how much potassium you're actually getting.
Okay.
So that's the challenge of it.
And that's fair. Again, that was kind of one of my hurdles to moving to some of the organic stuff, or more specifically ferments. Is yes, it's in there, but to what quantity do we know? Is that quantity beneficial? Is that, readily plant available? It's hard to give definitive answers with the tools that we have currently, at least us, you know what I'm saying? But there is some magic to it, because there's a lot of there's a lot of successful growers using methods like that too. So
yeah, like if I lived in Hawaii, I'd probably be more inclined to take my banana peels and other compost and or other scraps and make a compost from that, and then use that to grow with. But like the amount of labor associated with for someone here in Washington to go to the store, buy bananas, or take my old bananas and make a tea, like for $5, I probably have enough potassium sulfate to last me multiple cycles. So it's also just a
go.
time thing too. But
Yep. Economy too. Okay. So here's a couple cocoa questions. And again, this is something that over the years has continually been talking about. A lot of people are
yeah,
more familiar with the organic soil growing, but they love their cocoa. So I'll just get to the question. Shout out Mr. Sparkles, growing the no joke. Big ups. Actually, it's going to be entering the rec system where he's at. So I'm excited for that. But okay, question here. Have either of you found a good way to incorporate or base a living soil system off of cocoa? So let's maybe start at the beginning. Is cocoa not naturally conducive to a living soil system? Or maybe what is its drawback?
yeah. So cocoa has a couple issues here in the United States. One, it has a really large fossil fuel cost to get it here and a large energy cost to rinse and remove the salinity of it. Peat is not perfect, but it's coming from a closer location, and there is some research to show it is sustainable in terms of we're replenishing the bogs that we're removing. I did a whole podcast with the gentleman from the ARDS talking about it. So that's one challenge with cocoa. That being said, there are people that absolutely love cocoa. Sorry, I'm noticing someone is back that I thought I should have banned from last time. So I got distracted. They're gone before they make any weird comments. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
You know who I'm talking about.
I absolutely do. So yeah, to the cocoa though.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the cocoa. My advice, because I was asking the guys over at EcoGrow about this, actually, Gareth, because over in Europe, cocoa is a much more sustainable input than peat in a lot of ways. So what he's done is he formulates soil out of cocoa. And I just asked him the other day, like, what were his pointers? And I don't remember it all word for word, but one of the things I remember was he uses a little bit more compost than I do. I think he was at 30% compost. And then if you figure 30-ish% aeration, then you're about a third cocoa, compost, and aeration. I would want that compost to not be too alkaline so that we're not pushing the pH up too much, because one of the things I love about peat moss is we start with a very low pH. So I can add a lot of alkaline inputs. Whereas if I'm starting at 7 at neutral, I just don't have quite as much capacity for cations, potassium, calcium, magnesium, those sorts of things. Also, if you're going to be doing it, you definitely want to get some calcium in there in the form of gypsum. I'd avoid any limes or oyster shell. Those sorts of things are going to raise pH unnecessarily. And yeah, I'm talking about formulating something out of cocoa, because I know that there are people out there that want cocoa related products. So
right on. And this one kind of, naturally just goes into that too. It says, what are your thoughts on running powdered organic inputs, like maybe even the nutrient pack or something with cocoa coir, like Bio 365? Does it need to be, if somebody was running, let's say, a dry amendment line in their cocoa, would it be something that's like specifically tailored towards cocoa, like with added calcium, or is the general blend going to be good, whether it's soil or cocoa?
Yeah, I think, and I haven't used bio cocoa. It's just a different way of growing this idea that, you're feeding powdered inputs to the cocoa, kind of like you would more like a feeding schedule. You could absolutely do something like the same thing with our nutrient pack. As I think about it, I might change, I might have changed a couple inputs if I were to make a cocoa one specifically, but it should still work. We have a lot of growers that use our nutrient pack that are specifically growing in cocoa. I can think of a couple right off the bat who have said they've gotten really good results with it. I would just watch your pH. That's the biggest thing. It's just making sure you're not pushing your pH up above, let's just say 7.4.
Okay, 7.4. That's pretty high. Soil can handle that. Cocoa, you typically are running it lower. So that would be interesting. And more people are doing this. More people are experimenting, which is why, we're it's nice to get some more answers too as the data compiles.
Yeah. No, I love it.
See it.
That's the biggest thing. Like, just run a trial. If you want to try something, you don't have to commit a lot of your garden to it, but that's the best way to add products or remove products from your garden. A lot of times people run way too many things, and by running a trial, you might actually save money and use less inputs.
Do a good A and B test. I love a good A and B test. Shout out Chunky Nugs. Says question, says, do you use bat guano? And if so, he goes deep. He goes past the surface level here. He says, if so, do you use the insect eating bat guano in veg and fruit eating bat guano in flower? Different diets, maybe different minerals coming out.
Yeah. So there's definitely different guanos, and they have all different NPK. I don't use them for a few reasons. One, they have a big fossil fuel cost because they're coming from tropical regions for the most part. Two, there is a bacteria that can be found in them called histoplasmosis, or maybe that's the disease itself, but basically it's a pretty nasty disease from the bacteria in guanos specifically. Three, it is damaging to those ecosystems where it's harvested. So that's another factor that I consider. And then lastly, I just think we can get these same nutrients that we want from other sources. The one thing that I think bat guano wins at in terms of just as a, if you didn't take any of those other sustainability questions, you just had it on your shelf, it gives you very good available phosphorus. Usually we can look at a soil test and I can say you added phosphoric acid, you're using fish hydrolysate, or you're watering, you're using it as a pH down, or you're using bat guano. And we can see that because your available P is always very high. But if you have it, use it up, wear protection when you do, but reach out and I'll give you some better options for whatever mineral you're trying to get from the bat guano. I don't think there's any people used to talk about how I got to use the guano. There was terpenes and these other things because I got to get those terpenes
flavor.
Yeah, we can get those secondary metabolites from other inputs. I'm very confident in that.
Okay. Do you kind of clump Seaberg guano in with kind of what you said about the bat guano as well, as far as fossil fuel costs?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked into how that one is harvested to the same extent, but I can't imagine it's great. I know these things do have damaging. They may be revenue generating, but like with cocoa, and I think the industry has changed, but when the cocoa industry was first starting, it was very damaging to the health of the workers who were harvesting that cocoa in Indonesia and the Philippines. Like they were getting really bad, lung diseases and other things from that. You heard the same with bat guano over the years. I don't know if that's improved dramatically, but at the end of the day, it's not really a great industry to support.
Dude, I'll never forget. Again, this was the first commercial place I worked. I don't mention the name so I could talk about the place. I could do one or the other. It was a shit show. I've learned many lessons from this place, but I will still never forget walking. And this poor guy too, he kept doing it, but they had a huge, it was almost like the size of a dumpster bin. And it had this big corkscrew in it. And that's how it ground up all the cocoa that was being used, and he'd dump in the perlite, whatever, but he's just basically tossing bricks in there. And it was a new facility at the time. And within a few weeks, there was just a layer all over the entire room, all over the equipment. He had no PPE. It was one of those places. They were still in the trying to make their money back phase. And dude, I just feel bad for that guy because the amount of stuff he inhaled, I'm sure he's paying for it later in life. And that was a licensed commercial facility. So guys, don't just because you have the job, I guess I'm saying is stick up for your rights too, because if it's a licensed facility, they have to do things a certain way, but they're going to get away with what they can. So sorry, just, I'll never forget. Just you are the dumbest. You've not said anything. You can't even get a bandana. Okay. Sorry.
Well, I tour facilities on a semi-regular basis, and I always think about, and not just cannabis facilities. We talk about any horticulture, ornamental plant production, all of that. I think a lot about like what might have just been sprayed in this room before I got here. And this
Yeah.
is even with some of the organic guys and like
Yep.
even at facilities with friends of mine. Um, yeah, you gotta be careful, take care of your body, your lungs. When you get to be our age, it catches up with you. When you're in your 20s, you're like, yeah, I can do drywall all day with no mask. And then you realize, oh, I'm really hurting myself, Yeah.
Sawdust boogers are not a good thing, guys.
Yeah.
We've all had them. Oh gosh, yeah. Even dude, I'll go off on a tangent because it was a 24-hour facility, but certain sections after you spray, you have to be gone for again certain amount of time. But it's just like put up a sign, don't go in that room. You'll be good.
Yeah, so that's called the REI or return entry interval. And every pesticide label is required to have it. And every pesticide label will have PPE. And you are legally required to follow those instructions. So if you're applying any pesticide, guys, read the label and do follow it. Because not only that, but like the application rates that it gives you are going to be the optimal application rates for efficacy. So you're going to get your highest mortality rate with the lowest chance of like building up the pest building up defense to it. If you apply it at a lower rate, you're probably creating pests that are going to be more resistant to it in the future. If you over apply it at a high rate, you're much higher risk of phytotoxicity and residues on the leaves. Absolutely. And I just want to go back to your sustainability thing. Like, we have to make choices as growers, and we vote with our dollar. Like, I know people just this week were giving me a hard time about my position about the meat industry and saying like, hey, it's okay to use bone and blood meal. I got into it with Jeremy about this. I don't think either of us won't use bat guanos for the reasons we discussed about. Like, we agree on that. But like, our ocean industry is pretty shitty too. And our oceans are not very clean. So I would just encourage people to look up products, learn what heavy metals are. I mean, you can go on the WSDA site. You can look up our nutrient pack. You can look up craft blend. These are not numbers that I'm creating. They're numbers that were self-reported that show heavy metal levels. And we should make choices that are more sustainable and then healthier for our bodies. I mean, if we're going to wear PPE, we should also watch how much lead we're putting into our bodies. Like, we know the effects of these things. It's not just about like a vendetta or me trying to be a dick. It's about, let's just be safer with our choices and take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. It's again, as we get up into the age, it's something that I recognize more. And one thing that I want to dive into at some point with an optometrist is, again, a lot of us wear glasses when you're in the grow room, just even like at the tent, at the home level, but not everybody does, especially if you have glasses. Like, you have to get special ones that go over your glasses. I'm very curious about the cumulative damage and then how that basically will manifest itself in the future, because that is one study that I have not seen specific to indoor horticulture. I don't know if you're aware of one, but it would be interesting to see what the PPFD levels that we typically run have cumulative effects over time. But those are my own trips. I'll get back to some questions here, because this is kind of still tying into what you're saying is, we need to be watching the things, and there may be hidden dangers. And we got two questions on this one. Porky says, question, is rice water a good thing to use for watering plants? And Don't Get Caught Farm says, what about rinsed rice water for living soil? Is there a benefit, and is there anything that we should be maybe aware of as like a hidden hitchhiker with this rice water? Because I know there's a concern with rice as far as like arsenic, at least.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I think you're mostly getting starches with rinsed rice water, as far as I know. I don't know that there'd be a lot of like nutrition in the rice water.
Okay.
No clue, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You use rice water to start labs, I believe. The EM1, or where would the lactic acid come from? What am I?
The lactobacillus?
Yeah.
Well, it multiplies. I think it's coming from the air or from the rice itself. I don't remember, honestly, off the top of my head. But I don't think the levels would be particularly high in just rinsed rice itself.
Okay.
I did post a link to what I was talking about on, I
Oh,
don't know if it showed up on both our channels. I can send it to you privately so you can share it on your channel in case it didn't
okay.
share on both.
Yeah,
But
let me flip back here. I don't see. Oh,
people
there's.
can go click on there and you can pick a company. In fact, here, let me see. I can just show you guys what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and this is the official the Agricultural of Washington Government Department database, pesticides and fertilizers.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me add this up here and walk us through this.
You can look up any company, and I will not look up my competitors, but feel free to compare. But go in here and look up a product. You know, like in our case, look at the nutrient pack, for example, and you can see what the NPK value is. You can see the reported levels of arsenic and cadmium, you know, all of these things, lead. And then you figure out based off your application rate. So you have to look at application rate, so concentration of that product, and then what the level of arsenic, whatever, is in it. And like, I'm really proud of this bloom booster. This number is phenomenal for an organic input. Lead is virtually non-existent. You know, these are parts per million. To be able to get 8% of phosphorus with this low of arsenic, because arsenic and phosphorus are always really tied together. I was really proud of our guys working on that. So yeah, I suggest everyone look up the products that you're going to use in your garden, and make sure you're using ones that are as low in heavy metals and as safe as possible. That's all.
Yep. You'd be surprised. What was I surprised by the other day? Something was listed. It was actually a pesticide. Oh, my cloning gel, because it contains IBA, which is a rooting hormone. I couldn't get Clonex shipped to my house, but I could with a different brand. But I couldn't get Clonex shipped to me through Amazon. So I was like, that's interesting.
It must have another use that is less legal or something. Who knows?
I don't even know, but I went online just because I was like, what? Come on. I used to buy it in the store, but the only grow store within 100, probably even more than 100 miles now, closed a few years ago. So like, and I haven't used it for a long time, but I'm having a little problem right now rooting some clones. So I'm like, well, okay, go for the promotion. But yeah, other people in Washington State couldn't ship Clonex. So interesting.
There is a product called from Imeo that is out of stock right now. They need to make more of it, but it's a microbial cloning solution that works really well. We trialed it. We were selling it on our website for a while. Hopefully we'll get it back in stock at some point, but it's an alternative for people who don't want to use, Clonex or one of the, IBA products, but
I'm, again, we'll see how it works out, but I thought that was interesting because we got a question here. Big shout out to Fontucky. Kind of probably going to be a hard one to answer. I put a picture out earlier in the week too. I took a clone in after a decade or plus of not taking a clones, and I found 3 little red things on my sticky card. And unfortunately, I couldn't identify it. I'm still between like Persimolis, a red spider mite. It also looked like a clover mite, but I'm like, a clover mite probably doesn't like cannabis. I haven't confirmed that or not, but so who knows? But anyways, rooted clones in soil, double cup, clear inner cup. I'm seeing 2 small bugs in the soil, so below into the root zone. He says a really small spider-like soil bug with a small translucent worm. Small translucent worms, probably pot worms. They can affect and eat your young seed as the radicle pops out, but probably fine once you get developed root systems.
it's probably a fungus gnat larvae, honestly.
Okay.
They look, if it has a little black, like a dot,
Black
that
head.
looks kind of like an eye, a head on the front. Yeah. Yep. You can look up fungus gnat larvae. That would be my guess for that. Okay. But again, we're just going to be guessing, and most bugs are probably not going to be a problem. But yeah, without proper ID, there's no way to know.
Yeah, 2 small bugs in the soil. I mean, really, root aphid, obviously, but are there other like subdwellers that you could think of off the top of your head, whether they're, friend or foe?
I mean, a lot of cannabis pests do have life cycles in soil. Like some thrip species will pupate
Okay.
in soil. But
Interesting.
overall, I wouldn't be overly concerned. Another good, just general rule: if it moves really fast, it's probably a predator, and you're probably okay. I mean, he could be looking at a springtail and calling it. I don't know. Like
Right.
there's so many things in the soils, and people get them confused. So you really need to work with an entomologist or someone who's really good at identifying these things. I don't even trust myself beyond the basics of thrips and two spotted, and the real obvious hemp russet. Some of those things you can just really tell what you're looking at.
And Suzanne's got you questioning the thrips now too. It's not the Western.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for her to slide mount them so she can tell me what the heck I had. But they haven't come back. I was just in my room today, and my sticky cards are still looking clean. And I was checking all my leaves and actually doing a better job scouting. So, fingers crossed.
Yep. Here's another question, maybe kind of a natural cloning agent. Have you heard if willow water is good for clones or rooting? Basically, probably soaking the bark of the willow tree.
Yeah, I think it contains, what is it, salicylic acid, which is an aspirin,
Something
which is,
in
I think,
there.
a natural rooting hormone too. So yeah, I've heard there's online guides to soaking. You have to take freshly cut willow, I believe, for it to be effective. But I haven't actually done it myself. I just find cloning solutions, these powders, so easy when I clone that, again, if I was
Nice.
on a really, really tight budget, or I had, I don't know, I lived in
No
Hawaii, for
access. Yeah.
example. Yeah, then I think these things are great solutions.
Awesome. And again, just follow up here real quick. It says he doesn't see any mature fungus gnats, but they've all got to start somewhere. So who knows? But yeah, the
let me
little
see here.
blackhead is a good giveaway. A few months ago, I put out a video about like the top 5 dangers of germinating your seeds. And in that video, I have good close-up pictures of the potworms that I'm talking about. And that was definitely one of the factors that I looked at, because initially I thought it was fungus gnat larvae as well. But through my research that has the little black heads, what I had did not. So yeah.
Yeah, there's fungus gnat larva zoomed
Let's
in
see.
for folks. So it has that black head there. I don't know
Yep.
if you can see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me toss up another question for you here.
I do want to talk ladybugs at some point because I see people talking about them.
Do it. Let's go. Ladybugs. All right.
Okay. Here's my quick 30-second version. I used to buy ladybugs. I thought I was being super cool and chill because they're, a beneficial bug. Turns out they're all being wild harvested out of California. And so when you buy them, you're actually supporting the dirty, dark side of the biocontrol industry. So they're damaging the ecology by pulling them out of California. They're spreading disease. So even though they're all the same species of ladybug, the ones in Florida and the ones in Minnesota don't have the same disease resistance. Kind of like humans with the Indians when we brought over the smallpox. So attract native ladybugs from your area to your garden. Absolutely. Pollinators are the best. And ladybugs are great, but do not buy ladybugs unless there are some companies that are starting to actually rear them. But most 99% of what you'll find on the market, all the cheap ladybugs that you see at the garden center, you really don't want to buy those and if you don't believe me, just type in "do not buy ladybugs" into Google and you'll see an article. Top hit will be from Suzanne Wainwright Evans. And if you want a deep dive, I did an hour podcast on ladybugs and why you don't buy them with ladybug entomologist, JP Michaud, I think was his name. Fascinating. I actually really enjoyed it. So that's my ladybug thing. Thank you.
Good. Because I've, like many people, I have done that in the past as well. And this is back in the HPS days, and most of them just wound up inside my HPS hood fried. And I felt bad. So yeah, cute, but not necessarily effective. I just want to blow this one up here real quick. This is kind of what I was talking about, what I was dealing with there. See if I can go full screen with it. Those little things. Oh, they were all up in my stuff.
And straight to your face.
Yeah, I know. I know. What am I doing there? Oh, yeah, because it's like uncovering like a little seed. Do you see them in there? Do you see them squirming
Yeah,
inside the
that's
seed?
rough, man. Yeah.
Dude, those damn little potworms. Anyways, okay, I'll stop sharing that. One more to scare you. Ew. Okay. Sorry, guys. I was having fun there. Oh, we're not even showing the right screen now. That's what I get for being on the wrong page. What did I do? I broke it.
Oh, there we are.
Okay. Thanks for staying tuned. Shoot. All right, let's see here. Something that we could do real quick, little nugs. Got this one. Does the available soil nutrition affect the terpene profile? I would say absolutely. Sulfur being the first one that comes to mind. So, yes.
Yeah, secondary metabolite production, terpenes have a ton of levers, and a lot of them are environmental, some of them are genetic, and some of them are fertility. So it's complicated, and even stress events will impact that production. So there's a lot of things that impact terpene profiles.
The one going around just within this last year was spider mites. If you have like an infection or a problem with a certain insect, it was actually producing a higher terpene test on that. And there were a few people who were like, dude, I just, dumb.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. The plant is trying to protect itself. A lot of these secondary metabolites are plant defense responses, but you still don't want spider mites.
No,
maybe thrips. Maybe thrips.
Yeah, if you're trying to win terp wars, like don't go giving yourself spider mites for that extra 1% or whatever, just because it worked for some dude. But again, in theory, yes, it does work, but don't do it. Okay, Tad, here's a question. Does Tad have any plans for or recommendations for liquid organic fertilizers for those of us using a lot of small pots where top dressing each one isn't practical? And again, I'm assuming that he's going to say it's not necessarily practical because we have to wait, like we said, maybe 2-3 weeks before those become plant available. Smaller pots, we may run into a deficiency faster, and we need something that's more plant available, which is typically associated with the liquid nutrients. So
yeah, and I think he probably doesn't, if he has 100 plants, he doesn't want to be taking a tablespoon or whatever and going down the line for each one. So I totally get it.
Pinch here, pinch there. No, that's not scientific.
If you're not organic, there's a lot of great options for just synthetic, chemical fertilizers that you could run. I would say on those, buy the powder. Something from like J.R. Peters or Jack's is a good place to start. If you are organic, you did say liquid organic. Okay, my apology. My favorite just liquid fertilizer would be fish hydrolysate. Something like there's a ton of different brands out there on the market. A lot of them will have a little bit higher P or phosphorus number, which is nice because they're stabilized with phosphoric acid. And I think that's a great place to start. I will never release a liquid organic fertilizer because a lot of the stuff that you're paying for water, and it would just be someone like me mixing it with water for you. Unless it's something specific like that fish fertilizer. Now, fish fertilizer is stinky.
Yes.
And this is someone with a bad sense of smell that can barely smell anything. So I'm warning you, if you go that route, don't do it in the house where the wife or partner can smell it, because they will not be happy with you.
No, I second that. I've tried it. It works great. But yeah, do not. Well, depends on your comfort level of your sniffer. But yeah, just I don't recommend it. Where was this other question? Let's see here.
I see one I want to answer that just came in from
Get it.
Kevin. Okay. Yeah. Kevin asked, who's going to be the next guest on the podcast? I understand if you can't say. So I have the Cannabis Cultivation and Science podcast. I did the Dope History podcast with with Chad, which, by the way, my brother the other day ran into someone in Thailand, and he was like, oh, your brother's in cannabis. Does he know Frenchy cannoli? I was like, as a matter of fact, Tyson, I interviewed his, wife. I did know Frenchie, and he thought that was so cool. So
it's amazing.
If you haven't had a chance to check out the Dope History podcast, please take a look. On the cannabis cultivation and science one, though, I just got confirmed. I got some big names this week that I'm really excited about.
I'm blowing you up then. Do it. Hit it.
Oh,
what do we got?
I got Dr. Zamir Punja. When I went up to Canada, he's one of the best pathologists in the industry. So I got him to say he'd come on the podcast. So I'm scheduling with him now. I've got Jonathan Montpetit, who runs Organogram. It's the largest cannabis facility in the world. They're in Canada. Their numbers are just mind-boggling. And I met him at PhotoX this year. So it'd be really interesting to just pick his brain on how they scale like they do. I just got a message yesterday. This was the one I was most excited about. Do you guys know of he's got Instagram? It's what is it? I'm gonna mess it up now. Crime pays, but botany doesn't, or
yes.
Botany doesn't pay, but crime does. I don't know why I'm blanking right now because I'm on the spot. Joey Santatori. I'm gonna mess up his name too. Anyway, I've been following the guy forever. I find him so entertaining. He just said he'd come on the podcast, and so I'm super excited about that one too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I'm going to be. I know Dr. Nicole Gauthier is going to be coming back on. I just talked to Nadia Saba, Dr. Greenhouse. She's going to do one with me here again soon. So it's hard to just pin people down on the time to record it.
Yes.
Crime pays, but botany doesn't. Thank you, Bob. Yes. I'm super excited to talk to him. So, and I'm going to be launching a horticulture podcast, hopefully before Cultivate this year. I really want to get out and into that world too, and I hope people in the cannabis industry will listen too, because it'll allow me to interview guests that are unable to talk about cannabis. So that's the one thing about this current podcast is some people just because of their jobs, they can talk plants, but they can't come on a podcast that has cannabis in the name, which is. We all know that's stupid. But.
Yeah, at the the WSU field extension, they would love to troubleshoot and try to help me as long as I carefully crafted my question. But we all knew what we were talking about. But yeah, it's one of those kind of unsaid things sometimes because there are still professional repercussions for people, which is sad in this day and age, but it is where we are. So. More education, more to do. One last question, because I know we are we are at the end here, but one last question, because I see this come up fairly often, and we're talking about things that you can be adding into living soils today. But shout out Christopher Moberly. What do you think about adding molasses, brown sugar, and yeast in living soil beds? So I'll let you touch that one, Tad. I know you got it.
Yeah, I haven't done a ton of experiments with it. Okay. Where I've used unsulfured blackstrap molasses is in making aerated compost teas. And it's a phenomenal food source for that. It feeds bacteria, it feeds archaea, it feeds fungi, all these different microorganisms. It's a very good food source. So I would assume you'd have the same microbial growth in soil itself if you were to apply it at a reasonable rate, a couple teaspoons per gallon, maybe to start, tablespoon per gallon of water. So yeah, what you would be doing there with something like that with the sugars, you'd be feeding the microbes in the soil, which would potentially increase nutrient cycling. I haven't seen a lot of research one way or another, but I haven't used brown sugar or yeast. I would stick to molasses of those choices. And I think it's worth an experiment for sure.
Yeah. And I've used it in the past. I don't have any data to back up whether it did or didn't, but yes, off of that principle, it was about, so blackstrap unsulfured molasses, about a tablespoon per gallon. I used warm water to mix it and dilute it, pour that into cold water, and it just doesn't dilute as well. Smelled good. But yeah, it was all in the thought of feeding the microbes, and this was unofficial, unscientific, no way to measure the results. But I've done it. Cool stuff, guys. Cool stuff. We are out of time for this week. Tad, where can people find all of these channels? Where can they find you?
Yeah, over at KIS Organics, it's in my name right there. .com is our website, or you can go to our YouTube channel. We are throwing a conference this year in Montana again. I think it's still the latest Candy Cribs episode of Collective Elevation. That's the location. You can come there, get a tour, hear from a lot of the podcast guests. Still trying to get Chad here to come, but hopefully he'll make it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a blast. So a lot of my favorite people from the podcast. We're going to have a really cool sensory event. We rented out a 1,200 person concert hall in downtown Bozeman for the Saturday night.
Very nice.
It's going to be a blast. So yeah, if people can make it, it's the last weekend of August. Tickets are available now. And I think that's everything.
Right on. Guys, chadwestport.com is where you can find my gear, my merch. There's probably 3 packs of No Joke left until sometime in April. So they might be gone by tomorrow, but more will be coming in April along with some Westport posse. But that's it for the No Joke right now. Keep it locked on the Chad Westport YouTube channel. And again, guys, you are awesome because you choose to be here. I thank you. I appreciate that. And it's fun to see you guys interact and help each other in chat. So have a great week. We will see you next time.
Can I add one thing, Chad?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, that was such a great ending too. I just forgot. I'm in like 2 weeks. I'm going to be at Lucky Leaf in the expo in Minneapolis. So if any of you guys are in Minneapolis, I'll be giving a talk and hanging out in the Cannabis Chem Lab booth. So hopefully I could see some of you guys there. Sorry. Yes. Thank you so much, Chad. This was a blast.
Do it. I'm excited to do that. And next week too, when everybody tunes into the KIS Organics YouTube channel, remind them, give them your booth number, let them know where they can find you. But thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time. Peace.